Well, I'm Denny Stockdale, and I'm here with my friend Warren Holden, and we've got 5 questions around kindness. And the first question for you, Warren, is what does kindness mean to you?
That's a good question. I had to think about that for a while before getting involved in all of this. What it means to me. Kindness is an action to me. It's not an amorphous word or a warm and fuzzy feeling, as a lot of people take it to be. Kindness is actually the act of going beyond your comfort zone and doing something for someone who may be no relation to you, and doing something in a way that will benefit them without getting an intrinsic benefit or a monetary benefit back to yourself. Kindness sometimes is in restraining yourself from reacting to an idiot. The kindest thing that you can do, and I've been in that situation, is to actually smile, and if you can walk away, and if not, to just stand there and hold your space so that they get nothing.
Yep. You got it, buddy. Next question, and one that I think you'll probably have about as much passion about as I do. How has music impacted your life? Because it's literally saved mine.
Music weaves through everything that I do. Every thought, every memory, every good time, every bad time. There's a soundtrack to it. I've been in the business of dealing with musicians and doing concerts. So that's the business side. I like silence, but even in my silence, there is a resonance, a rhythm. So music to me it's the essential glue that holds everything together. Some of our greatest poets and activists have come through music, because music gives people some kind of resonance that allows you to deal with the world and try and raise its frequency as well.
Yep. Yeah, and we do need to raise to a higher vibration, right?
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things my mom used to say before she passed, and I would talk to her several times a day, is always take the high road. You know, and that's kind of what you're talking about here. Not kind of, but that's what you're talking about here. So our next, anything else on music you want to add?
Music is everything. I have a stand-up bass that's now constantly in my living room. And multiple times during the day, no matter what's going on, if I need to relax, if I need to think, or sometimes if I just need to have my fingers doing something to keep my mind in a different place, I will go and tinkle on that stand-up bass.
Awesome.
And it resonates throughout the wood in the house and throughout everything.
Yeah, that's incredible. My video guy from last year, he shot 5 concerts for me in Minneapolis, and he plays bass, and he winters in Tucson.
Yeah.
So you know, I'm liking this area, you know, and I'm not too far from you, but I don't know if I'll make it back out there because of the crowd. Anyway, next question. Do you recognize acts of kindness? And how does that make you feel?
Recognize them in my life, or recognize them in general with other people?
Either way, both and.
I recognize acts of kindness. I recognize kind people more than that. Acts of kindness, I don't know if I recognize them or not, because something that someone is doing may be an act of kindness and it goes unnoticed. I recognize kind people. I know a rapper who has been through a lot. He calls himself OG Suicide because he was going through the gang life and a number of other things, and it was a downward spiral. because his soul was not about dealing drugs and hurting people, but his culture that he grew up and lived in meant that you were either a part of that clique or you were an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up in an environment, it's like growing up in Beirut. If you're not a terrorist, you probably will become one, for
Right.
want of a better way to move. And he shifted his concept of what real was because one day he got so tired of the whole thing, he took a 44 to his head and pulled the trigger, trying to blow his brains out. He still got the indentation in his head where the bullet
Mm.
went. It wasn't his time. He survived.
Mm.
And during his recuperation, he had a time to think. And the thinking led him to the reality that peer pressure is bullshit. People telling you how you're supposed to be is ridiculous. Why would you take a temporary situation and create a permanent solution? He changed. His music is all about uplifting things. His music is all about uplifting people. His music still comes from the street. It's about the street. It's in a language that street people understand. But he now gives to kids, talks to youth, and on the side that a lot of people don't know about, he will take tents and clothing down to Skid Row and hand it out to people, making sure that folks down there are comfortable. He gets nothing monetarily back from that. He doesn't promote the fact that he does that. That is a kind of person. His acts of kindness come from an understanding of his own pain that led him to try and take his life. And it put him on a path that allows him to do random acts of kindness because, in many ways, I think it's an extension of him saving his own life daily. So that's how I see kindness. I see it in people whom I've met in situations, sometimes in politics, who actually care about the job that they chose to do and do to the best of their ability the most they can to actually serve the people, whether it's a city councilman or a cop. People actually are there in many instances to serve. I've seen it in emergency prep people. I've seen it in first responders. I've seen it in police who are actually sickened by the image that they have, but they know people who do the things that created that image, and yet they're inside a culture
Mm-hmm.
that, much like the guy in the gang, they're inside a culture that doesn't really stand out, doesn't allow for people to be individuals and survive or thrive. And yet in their interactions with people is where their kindness comes through. With the power that they have of the gun and the badge and the fear, they choose not to use it indiscriminately.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind people.
Takes courage
Yes.
and support and encouragement too. So, all right, next question. Do you recognize acts of unkindness, and how does that make you feel?
I recognize acts of unkindness. I see it. I hear it. I stay close to my home and I stay close to my family and my circle of friends. When I see it in public, I have to confront it. And I'm not always nice because, well, because I'm not always nice. When I see it and it's around me, I do whatever I can. And I've learned over the years that meeting violence with violence is not really an answer for anything. It simply escalates. But that's where I used to go. Now I simply confront, and I'm willing to accept whatever the consequences are in that moment. I don't escalate, but I don't back away.
Right, right. Yeah, last year when I started getting involved with our Minnesota group, our kindness organization back there, and you might have met some of them when they came out in June. Um, we had a discussion around nice and kind because Minnesota is known for nice, and I don't want to be nice. I want to be kind.
Right.
And there's a huge difference, in my opinion. You know,
I
nice is
understand.
doing something because I want something back from you, right? Being kind is I'm letting go of all attachments. I just want to see you improve. You know, I want to be of service because that's how I get validated for what I do as well and for who I am. You know,
Yeah.
and I think you and I are on the same page on some of those things. They're similar pages
Yeah.
anyway.
It's a constant. It's a constant for me because if I were to say that I'm kind always, I would be a liar. But I've gotten better at catching myself when I start to slip into old habits that are easier than being conscious of who you are at every moment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it takes courage to walk away from a bad situation where people are just screaming because it's not going to resolve anything. Like you said, it would only escalate,
Right.
you know? So, anyway, uh, and I've got stories, man, do I.
It's like an instant high. I know.
Yeah. So our last question is how can we create a kinder world together?
Oh, that one to me is really easy because it's not about money and it's not about laws. It's not about politics. It's always has been, will be about people. The way to create a kinder world is to tell stories that people can relate to, that will entertain them, and have these stories become the new fairy tales. And all of them have at their essence the idea of kindness elevating every situation, which is what I'm about doing. Also, it's about kindness in the moment is transitory. And I had a young man named Stephen Harm give me his philosophy of what he wanted to do. He wants to create, at a minimum, a 100-year plan because we are so short-sighted and we think so small that we're looking at what we're going to change tomorrow or what can we change next week or the elections are next year, and we can't think beyond that. If we create a 100-year plan, it allows us to breathe. It allows the space in between all these millions of moments that aren't as important as having a goal and setting up incremental steps to reach that goal that don't push you to make a decision now because tomorrow might be different. And a 100-year plan is a starting point. A 200-year plan is a lot better. To create stories that tell people that thinking about the environment, thinking about your great grandchildren is something we should be doing now. About the future, we can change the past because we're living in it, that will make that future different. And it's a totally different way, at least for a Western society, to think. Oriental societies think that way. It's part of their culture. African societies think that way. It's part of the culture because we remember the ancestors and we want to live in the spirit of the ancestors. So in the future, we can be an ancestor that someone thinks of highly. And to create the stories that make that a reality, I think it will turn that switch in people to start understanding. Act for the future, not for the moment. And
Yeah.
we've got our kids now telling us, you've raped and sacrificed my future for your momentary stupidity. It's enough.
Yep. Yep. I totally agree. I can't. We can.
Yes,
You know, those are
with our
four words that
100
have,
year plan.
you know, yeah. Yeah.